Welcome to Range World, the podcast where life, development, leadership, growth, intentionality, and experience come into balance right before your very ears. And now, here's your tour guide into Range World, the president of Get Life in Balance, Rain Kansman.
All right, welcome back to Rain's World. And today I have Mr. George Katsenes with us. Let me introduce him. He's a retired senior director of functional learning at Cisco. And that's where he and I met. George actually was the head of my department when I was there. He began his career with Cisco as a marketing associate in his hometown of Chicago, Illinois, in March of 1981. Over the next 15 years, George held various sales positions and then transitioned into training, where he led the efforts both internally and at the regional level from Chicago. In February 1996, George was asked to come to Cisco corporate headquarters in Houston as a corporate sales and marketing trainer. Over the next nearly 20 years, he was promoted several times until his last position of Senior Director of Functional Learning. One of the 7 centers of expertise reporting directly to the Senior Vice President of HR under Cisco's revised HR organizational structure. That's a mouthful.
Sure is.
After retiring in 2015, George remains active in sharing his expertise as a guest presenter at various events in the local Houston food service community. And George and his wife, Barbara, are residents of West Houston, where they live with their 4-legged child, Buzz, a rescue dog. And George is a certified archery instructor and regularly performs on the keyboards with his cover band In Time.
That's right.
Is George Katsenes. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back again. This is great.
Yeah, we always like to have you back, my friend. You always have some great things to drop on us. So today you want to talk about trust.
Yeah.
Big topic.
Big topic.
Yeah.
Important topic.
Yeah, it's a very important topic. In fact, in the last recording I just did, somebody alluded to, he says, this is fun and I got a great topic, but it doesn't happen unless you have trust. And I said, well, guess what? My next recording is on then. So here we are. So let me ask the first question.
Sure.
How would you define trust in a leadership role?
Yeah, I mean, the term trust in general has a lot of different definitions. I found one that sort of works with respect to your company, Life in Balance, so the work and life balance. This one kind of addresses, the definition addresses sort of both sides of that, which is why I thought it was appropriate for our discussion today. The definition goes like this. It says it's a reliance, which I love that word. It's a reliance on the character, the ability, strength, or truth in something or someone. And the someone in our discussion today would be the group leader or the team leader. So let me give you some examples of what I mean by that, about that from both sides.
Okay.
I can rely on the character of my best friend, Rain Kansman. He's honest with me. He gives me great, honest feedback, and I'm willing to listen to it. And I'm fine with whatever he tells me. I can rely on the ability of my car repair person, who always repairs my car properly. The price is always right, and that's why I've gone back to them for 15 or 20 years. I can rely on the strength of my bowstring, my 20-pound bowstring, to release the arrow accurately and give me a better chance to hit the target appropriately. Or I can rely on the truth that the sun will come up tomorrow morning. It's very reliable that that'll happen. So all those things really mean, I love the word reliance. I can rely on that thing called trust from the person or the event that is happening. So trust really is a real foundational principle required of any leader to be successful and overall, and it gets down to this always, achieving their results.
Yeah, well, yeah, we've been involved with corporation that results was, and I would not doubt that any organization and results is the final word. What I like, George, what you said there, and brought back a lot of good memories of the times we worked together. And I felt that very same trust with you in that way. And that helped us through some very tense times that, that we had gone through at time. And then we also had some great celebrations and great times, but because I knew you were going through it with me as my leader, that made it a lot easier. So I like that. I like, and the reliances, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, I can rely on that. And I think, not to be cliche-ish, the truth will set you free. Well, being honest and truthful in both your personal and business relationships just takes away a lot of hassles that you might have if you act otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. And the little white lies don't work either.
It don't help.
No. So let me ask you the next question. What are some of the ways a new leader can build trust with their team? Because you and I knew each other quite, and we let that trust built over time. But what about a new leader?
Yeah, new leaders have especially difficult times, and I suspect this day and age that more than that, because of the remote nature of work. Much more, it's you and I could sit in the room together and look each other in the face, but remotely makes it a little differently. But let me answer that question in two parts. Okay. First, there are some very classic, what are called trust traps. Okay. Traps that leaders can fall into. This is the veteran leader as well fall in this, but the new leaders really especially have to avoid these. And when I've got a list of about 5 or 6 I want to talk about. And then after that, talk about activities that new leaders should probably gravitate toward to enhance the level of trust in their group. Okay, so let me talk about these trust traps first. First one I'll talk about is new leaders tend to start right off the bat, and veterans again, by making assumptions. So for example, I'm sitting in my office and here's George coming down the hallway toward my office, and he constantly is always negative and complaining. And I have this assignment that I wanted to give him to see if he could handle it. But I know that he's just gonna just complain and not be organized. And so I've made an assumption about George that might be unfair in this circumstance. I might give him this assignment and he hits a home run. Right. So I've got to be careful about making assumptions. You erode the trust in the employee in you when you have predetermined that they're not going to be successful. Making assumptions. Second one we're all familiar with. It's a killer. It is a deal breaker. It's breaking your promise. Yeah. There is nothing worse than breaking promises. So, for example, as the leader of a team, I promised to review a proposal that Rain has given me, and I'll say I'll get you an answer by 3 o'clock tomorrow. And 3 o'clock tomorrow comes and goes, and 3 o'clock the next day comes and goes. And by the third day, you come by and say, hey, I'm just curious, did you have a chance to look at my proposal? And I go, oh yeah, I've been busy. It's in my stack. I'll get to it soon. And the air goes out of the balloon, the trust balloon, and loses the air. I mean, that's what happens. For those of you with children, if you've ever promised your kid, I want to go to the park, and you come home and you're dead tired, and say, hey, Daddy's a little tired, Mommy's a little tired tonight. That's devastating to them. So breaking your promise is extraordinarily difficult to overcome, and really, really erodes trust in that employee. You're better off to give an explanation and be honest. I have to be honest with you. I didn't get to it because, and let me revisit another deadline that I can keep. That kind of thing is much better than just breaking the promise and giving excuses. Right. Speaking of giving excuses, another trust trap new leaders can get into and often stub their toe on is they always try to cover for themselves. Yeah. Not my fault. someone else is the reason that I didn't come through. So I got interrupted by so many phone calls and I'm so busy I couldn't get to your proposal. Or if it wasn't for George and Rain always screwing up and me having to clean up their mess, I could get to my own work and get to your proposal. It's really, I mean, I'm just cleaning up all these other people's messes, you know. So it's kind of like pushing back, deflecting, covering yourself is how I interpret it. Terrible eroder of trust.
Yeah.
So something you don't want to do and stay away from. Next one is kind of a real tough one to deal with, and it's when the rumor mill within your group starts. People talking about other team member, or they're the conduit for business rumors that are happening in the company itself, is to not step in and try to resolve, stop, interrupt that from continuing, and rather by sometimes no action is sanctioning it. So you don't want to do that either. So you need to, a new leader needs to understand when those kinds of things come up, they need to be addressed. They need to be, the people involved need to be brought in and just talk open and honestly. So it's an open and honest conversation so that the truth comes out about the rumor, and then the leader can act as a fact finder and find out if that rumor is in fact true. You know, so that kind of thing can also really erode trust in the employees in their leader.
Mm-hmm.
Couple of more here I'll talk about. This one has happened to me a long time ago, and it really changed my view of the person I was working for. It's when you bypass people. So for example, leader assigns a task. I send you a task, Rain. I say, here's the task. I want you to have this information back to me by 3 o'clock tomorrow. And then I have sort of buyer's remorse. You know, Rain's been late before and I really need this information. So I call John in and Mary and say, Mary and John, will you do me a favor, work together and get this information to me? And they do. And they beat Rain by an hour, but Rain did make the deadline, got me the information. When Rain comes in, I say, well, I already have the information. I wasn't sure if you'd be getting it to me on time. So I asked John and Mary to do it. Well, I mean, you've just completely eroded the trust in you from that employee. You'll lose that employee.
Yeah.
And one more I'll kind of mention here is missed opportunities. Not taking the opportunity to acknowledge a team member for an accomplishment of some sort. Now, I'm not saying you gush over something that doesn't deserve it, but acknowledging some achievement or some completion of a task or a great presentation in front of others is a good idea. So for example, we're at a team meeting and Mary gives a great presentation on a piece of a project and some great conclusions. And I say, oh, that's great, Mary. Could you put that report in my stack? And I'll write you an email and review the details later. Let's move on with our agenda. It's kind of like, well, thanks a lot, you know?
Right.
So take the opportunity, you know, let's take the opportunity just to say a couple of words. How did you come to that conclusion? That sounds like you spent a lot of time. A few words, a few moments, just blossoms and blooms the idea that I can trust this leader to recognize my work. And that's hugely important. So Rain, there's 6 and there's more, I'm sure. Again, making assumptions, breaking promises, covering yourself, covering your CYA, as we called it in the business in the day, spreading rumors or being part of that process, bypassing people, and missing opportunities.
Yeah, I like that list, George. And that last one, I can't tell you how many times I've walked out of a room and went, oh, why didn't I say that at that time?
Yeah.
The other two things that came up for me in that, George, certainly a big lesson is about covering ourselves. And I read someplace that 80 to 90% of our thoughts, when we do something, make a choice that has a bad impact, we try and figure out a way to get out of it. You know, we try and figure out an excuse for that. And luckily we don't act on those. and that's why they call it, that's why I would say that that's going to be a difficult one all the way around, because it's really easy to kind of blame it on the weather. The sun was in my eyes, whatever, right? As
Yeah.
we do that. And yeah, that hit home. So the missed opportunities, especially for me, and then the covering, but yeah, some good pieces. Okay, well, so what's the other side of that? What's the other side?
Yeah.
Of that?
So here's, and this again, all these are really things that all leaders could use and should work on, but new leaders especially face these challenges because very often they're thrust into positions with very little time to acclimate. And so here's some things that I think would help a new leader to make sure that the level of trust in their group, which of course, and I'll get to it a little bit later, really enhances the level of results they can achieve. So let's talk about leading by example. Now, we always talk about walk the talk, and that's kind of cliche-ish, but what I'm saying that, remember one thing, most team leaders are promoted from being part of the team.
Right.
And what the relationships you had as an equal member with your team members, when you get promoted and now become the leader, and that's exactly the position I was in.
Right.
People look at you differently. They do not look at you the same way. So their eyes are on you and they take their cues from you. And you have a great opportunity to show them, I'm the same guy you used to trust as a peer, you can trust as a leader. I'm just helping us organize and get to a place and coordinate getting to that place. So you've got to follow through again with the promises that you make and set that example. And it's especially important, back to the remote team thing. You don't have that person in front of you where you can watch, really get a sense of how they're feeling or reacting to what you're saying. So leading by example and being consistent with that is really, really an important thing. So that's one. Obviously, the second one would be to be very open with your communications. Everyone needs to be talking to each other honestly, as well as you talking to them in an honest, meaningful way. And, there's a couple of little tidbits here I'll just throw out. There's many more than this. But for example, when you're a new team leader especially, is one of the first things you should do with your team is to create a team charter. Now, when I say that, I'm not asking, you're not putting together the Magna Carta or writing War and Peace. This is not what I'm getting at. I'm just saying, how are we going to work together? How would you feel comfortable with each other and with me as your leader working together? 3, 4, 5 things. For example, demonstrate, sharing relevant information on a regular basis, taking time out to talk about particular issues open and honestly, having a charter that says, start the meeting on time, always be on time. Those kinds of things, even though they sound, matter of fact and a no-brainer, putting them on paper and having that maybe on the wall someplace and say, we decided when we started this group and I took over that we're going to work this way. And I'm not seeing that right now, or I'm seeing it and I want to not miss the opportunity to tell everybody I'm happy that you're doing it that way. The other thing is with new team leaders, everybody may not be people that you know. So getting to know your team is really important. And I don't mean necessarily deeply personally, but certainly knowing a little bit about their life and their hobbies and interests is not a bad thing. Having coffee with new team members offsite, not to talk about business so much, talk about life in general, just once in a while, a little taste. It's like good spice, just a little bit goes a long way. That occasionally with everybody on your team, take out even the veterans that you've known for 100 years and say, let's go have lunch and tell me about the kids' baseball team or whatever it might be. Those things are really critical in establishing an open and honest relationship with your team members. Again, the remote folks have an extra difficulty and extra challenge in doing that. So it's even more important that you make and find ways to do that. Another one to new leaders that may be listening to this is never automatically place blame. When people work together, including the leader, mistakes are going to get made. Instead, you want to encourage everyone to think about, it's a great topic to enhance trust in the group and transparency among the groups, to talk about the mistake, as a third, in the third person. In other words, not about Rain or George, but about the mistake. We're talking about that. Why did that happen? How can we avoid it next time? What other strategies can you think about to avoid that happening? And do you see how that negatively impacts the progress toward our goals? Things of that nature are very, very important. Another one is, we're back to that rumor mill a little bit, but even you really want to discourage gossip. But here's another one that we do see in larger groups generally, is people that form cliques, and the cliques sort of stick together. Yeah, and it's not so much that the other person, may not be interested in being in the clique, but they may feel isolated from the group by seeing another clique operating, and they begin to drift away from feeling that this is a safe place, that we can trust each other. I wonder if they're talking about me.
Right.
All of those kinds. I know that's a small thing, and in business, you don't want to have to deal with stuff like that. But the fact of the matter is, it exists, it happens, and as the leader of the group, you have to openly discuss and discourage this very damaging behavior. Here's one more, is when there are trust issues, including if you get the feedback that you didn't project the trust as the leader, is you got to talk about it openly. Transparency, feeling open about being able to talk about that. In other words, look, these teams are doing business. They got work to do. There's lots of hard stuff to talk about. But these are the little things that sort of come along with that can really stop the team in its tracks. And it centers around this idea of having the overall trusting relationship. So there's a few tips. Lead by example and communicate openly. Know your team members. Don't place blame. Discourage the cliques and the gossip, and be open about talking about trust issues as they may arise.
Yeah, I love those. Wow, lots of really cool stuff, George. So that first part you're talking about, walking the talk, it brings back another lesson that I heard, that as a leader, we're never not leading. And I wish some leaders out in the public eye would realize that today, right?
We're not getting political, are we?
No. And not necessarily even political, but in sports things, in whatever it is, there just seems to be people that don't or forget that, okay, I may not be right now in my leadership role, I may be at the grocery store, might be doing this, but you're always in that role, and it's part of your life, and it's part of your makeup.
Absolutely.
The rumor mill, I can't tell you how many people said, I don't deal with that. I'm not going to deal with. And you're right. By saying that, they're sanctioning it, just
you're
because
giving
they're not going to
permission.
deal with it. Yeah, go for it.
Go for it. Go. If I don't want to hear about rumors, knock yourself out. And that's not good.
No. And I especially like the separating the person from the problem. Absolutely. How many times I had to sit down in a difficult conversation with somebody on my team and talk about something, and how I stopped to make sure that I didn't say, you suck at that. It's, hey, here's the company policy. Here's the information I have from the database, right? So
well, the other thing is that, that stuff festers too. And, I've got a couple of things I want to talk about and tell you about regarding that, because that's dangerous territory.
Yeah. So what are some of the biggest lessons you learned around trust, George?
Yeah. So I think one, we've talked about this for 100 years, but it's still very, very important. If the people in the group and yourself as the leader of the group have really clear, defined goals, and everybody knows exactly what they're shooting for, and you can exchange constructive feedback around those goals, well, this is just and you always come back to that. That's your touchstone, if you will. That it always, the team senses that there's a trusting group, because we always seem to, when we get off, we always kind of get back in a positive way back to what we decided we were going to do. Same thing with that charter. We said we were going to work this way, and these are the goals we're going to work on. So it's really important to, of course, stick to that. So coming back to that and having those clear goals are really, really important. Here's the one that is near and dear to both our hearts is, as a team leader, you have the obligation and the responsibility to provide time and resources for training these people to get better at what they do. I was very, very fortunate. My first 3 to 5 years at the corporate headquarters at Cisco, I was sent to different seminars I got paid full boat for the weeks I was gone. It was all paid for. And I had learning experiences that I carry with to this day. So the recognition was there, and I was very thankful for that. So, and then this step I also experienced, which some leaders, it's not like I'm going to send you to training that'll make you better. That's not the point. Mm-hmm. What I was asked to do every time I came back, I had to report back on what I learned and how I would use it on my job at our company, in our team. This way, there's some measure of responsibility around. I didn't send you away for a week's vacation, sent you away to learn something to help our group achieve its goals. That's another thing to always focus on. But you've got to provide that resource. Admit your mistakes. Being a transparent, I get that word is a great word, but showing a little vulnerability can go a long, long way in enhancing trust. If I was wrong, you raise your hand, say, I screwed this up. Here's what I did wrong. Here's how it negatively affected us and affected Rain over there, was personally hurt by that. I want to apologize for that. And I want to talk about and get some ideas from you how we can avoid that happening again. That just takes you to a whole other level as a trusting leader. Yeah. Another thing is, and some people are afraid to death to do this, is to advocate for people. If I've got a stellar team member and they're really good and they get noticed and they have a chance to go, do something else, or somebody asks me, do you have anybody in your group that might be interested? We have this challenge. Advocate for them. Yeah. Oh, I don't want to lose him. Well, of course you don't. But the other side of the coin, it's your responsibility to help and build people's careers as people helped you. So I think if you get the reputation as somebody who helps to advance people in the organization, your desk will be flooded with people that want to work for you. Yeah. So you won't have a shortage of people to work with. Yeah. You have to address performance issues. Yeah. Toughest part of being a new leader, we want to have friends, we want everybody to like us, but you have to address performance issues. How you go about that is the key to success or the key to failure. If you let it fester, if you let a non-performer continue to non-perform, other people see that, morale goes down, productivity goes down. You start to get people who I call minimalists. Yeah. They're in at 7:59 in the morning and they're walking out at 4:59 in the afternoon. They plug it in, they respond when they feel like it, things of that nature. And here's the dangerous part. Once an employee becomes disenchanted or is not performing and allowed to do that, and others see that, their morale goes down. Morale gets people depressed, and sometimes they get angry. Right. Now, let me just tell you from experience and from what I've read, angry employees, you are in a dangerous place. You're very in danger of losing them completely. There's no trust at that point. They want out of your group, or they want out of the company, or they just want to do what they got to do to get their check. And as soon as the next best thing comes along, they're out of there. Does not show any trust. Right. There's no trust involved. So there's an old saying, it's funny, you have to deal with an angry employee. Yeah. You have to deal with it. You can't avoid it, because as this saying says, it's easier to tame a wild horse than it is to resurrect one that's dead. Yeah. So as wild as they might be, as crazy as that situation is, as angry as they are, deal with it.
Yeah.
Or you've written them off, basically, is what
Yeah.
that's. So try to always see the vision of a trusting team. You want to believe in it, walk the talk, as we talked about, be a teacher, be a coach. And I guess to summarize all these ideas about what I've learned and what maybe new leaders can take with them, the word trust can serve as an acronym for some basic behaviors. We've talked about all of them, but maybe this will help folks remember. The T in trust, the first T, should stand for transparency.
Gotcha.
Be open, honest, share good and bad news, express how people, let them express how they feel about the information. And honestly, if you something that you've been told you can't share with your team,
Right.
tell them that.
Right.
I've been asked not to share that with you.
Mhm.
I'll go back and find out why, but I've been asked not to share that with you.
Right.
At least you've been honest to that extent. I can't talk about it. That doesn't get it anymore. You've got too many smart people out there.
Yeah.
And by the way, these days with too many choices. So
Yep.
don't, if you've got good people, them trusting you is imperative. The R in trust is respect. Look, you've got to mutually respect people. You've got to allow for their opinions. You've got to listen openly. You can respond with constructive type of feedback. Reality is reality, and the truth is the truth. And if it's I would rather hear the bad news honestly, but non-judgmentally.
Right.
But just to say that, look, this is what might happen if this doesn't change. The U in trust could stand for unite. Unite your team. Avoid the gossip. Avoid the cliques. Team involvement in meetings. Give a piece of every meeting to somebody to talk about something, even if it's not related to the business. I'm talking 10, 15 minutes. Everybody then feels part of the team. It works magic, and should be something to consider. The S, show you care. Advocate for people. We talked about that. Allow for personal expression. Express the value that they bring to the team. Not all the time. You don't want to, like I said, gush over nothing. But a little goes a long way. It makes people feel welcome on an ongoing basis and trusting in you. Finally, the second T is back to that idea of training activities. Provide the internal and external opportunities. You've got to allow people the time to go do it. And you have the right to ask for them to report to you about how they feel
Right.
they can use what they learned in the group. So there's a fella I've watched on TED Talk. I think everybody's familiar with TED Talks.
Mhm.
His name is Simon Sinek, Sinek,
Mhm.
a phenomenal speaker about the work environment. And he said something that when I saw it, I remembered it and went back and looked at it again. That's very pertinent to our conversation today. And he said very simply, we'll talk about, if you don't remember anything else from this little time we've spent together today, remember this. He said, be the leader you always wish you had.
Yeah.
So how many times have we worked for someone, we said, I wish they would do this. I wish they would do that. I'd like to hear more of this from. Be that leader. Because when you're that leader, a lot of these other things we've talked about will be, they'll kind of come along for the ride.
Right.
And really enhance the trust in your group, and that enhances your productivity. One short reference I'll give real quick. There's a great book I read. It's over 20 years old, but it's still pertinent today. And it was called, and it's still available, Trust in the Balance. And I think there's new editions of it. And it was written, then the author's name is Robert Bruce Shaw. So think of Robert the Bruce, the hero, and Shaw at the end. And it's been updated, and it really talks about the correlation between the level of trust that employees have in their leaders and in their organization and what they do. And there's different examples of that, and how that correlates directly to the increase in productivity and bottom line. Profit. So this is not just a feel-good thing, trusting in your leader, in your group, or your organization, but it really, really makes people a lot more productive, wanting to be productive, wanting to take responsibility, wanting to take on the next challenge or the next project. And as a leader, you have the obligation to enhance that environment of trust.
Yeah. Wow. George, a wealth of information. This is why I wanted you to come back. The wealth of information. Gosh, I really appreciate all this information you just shared. And yeah, the investment of time in your people, the investment of showing you care, and the investment of helping them grow is so good. It pays dividends.
Yeah, it makes your job fun too. My gosh, how good of a feeling is that to walk into that kind of an environment?
Yeah, well, I had fun today again. Thank you, my
Well,
friend.
thank you for having me,
Appreciate
and
you.
good luck.
You got it. Take care.
Later. Bye-bye.
This has been another leadership lesson from Rain's World. If this kind of learning whets your appetite, leaving you wanting for another helping of this kind of content, visit me at getlifeinbalance.com.